Hi, Roxy Keller here again, and I'm continuing to bake my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges. And I'm finishing up week 2, which is biscuit week or cookie week. And the third challenge of the week is the Showstopper challenge. So it is typically several different bakes and some big thing to build. So the challenge this week is to make a game out of cookies. And the challenge includes the idea that you have to come up with a game, you have to make the board, make the playing pieces, and all of that. So I have in mind 2 different cookie recipes. These are both cutout cookies. The first one for the game board will be a cherry almond cutout cookie, and the second one will be a chocolate orange coconut cookie. So to start, I need to toast my coconut and my almonds so that they are ready to go in the batter when the batter is ready. I've made these cutout cookies many times before, so I'm using my own recipe that I've put together from several different ones. I have not made cherry almond or coconut, so I'm not 100% sure how much almonds and coconut I'll need once I make the batter. So I'm going to toast 150 grams of almonds on a baking sheet, 100 grams of coconut. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees, so I'll put both of these in. They'll take 7 to 8 minutes. I'm going to make a double batch of my cutout cookies and then split it in 2. In one of them I'll add the cherry almond, and the other I'll add the chocolate and orange and coconut. Into the bowl of a stand mixer, I'll start with 2 sticks of butter, which is 1 cup of butter, or the sticks will add up to about 225 grams. That's salted butter at room temperature. Now I'll add 4 eggs. Along with the butter, I'll add 1 stick of vegetable shortening. If you're opposed to using vegetable shortening, you can just use more butter, but it just means that your cookies will likely spread a little bit more. I need mine to be able to have clean edges when I cut them. Now I'll add 4 eggs at room temperature. The coconut took about 6 to 7 minutes, and I did stir it about halfway through. Now that just needs to cool. Since I'm mixing together the wet ingredients and then I'll split it in 2, I won't add all of the flavorings because one will get cherry and almond, the other will get chocolate, coconut, orange. But I am going to put in a couple of teaspoons of vanilla just because that adds to all of the flavors. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And after 8 or 9 minutes, the almonds are toasted. So I'm going to put both of these in the freezer so they will be nice and cold when we're ready to use them. Since I don't want to put those hot pans in the freezer, I transferred these to paper plates, and now I'll put these in the freezer. Last ingredient before I mix is half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so I will cream these together using the paddle attachment until the butter, shortening, and eggs are well blended. To my mixture of eggs and butter, I need to add 2 cups of granulated sugar. 2 cups of granulated sugar or 440 grams, and mix. Okay, since I know the weight of my bowl, I'm going to parse out half of this batter into another mixing bowl, and that will be for my 2 different batters. So the batter weighs 1,077 grams, so I'll put half of that, which is 538 grams, into this other bowl. So So I'll set that aside for the chocolate. Now I'll weigh out the dry ingredients for the cherry almond cookies. 358 grams of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, to the wet ingredients for the cherry almond, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of cherry extract and 1 teaspoon of almond extract. I'm going to whisk together the baking powder and flour. And to make the cookies even more interesting, I am going to add some chopped dried cherries. And I have the almonds. They are cool enough to chop now. I'm going to chop them in this little nut processor. I really do this by eye, but I'm going to try and measure it out so I'll know how much I used. That's a heaping ½ cup. I'm going to see how that looks once I pour it in the wet ingredients. That heaping ½ cup weighed about 75 grams. So we want to chop these enough that they make nice small pieces, but not so much that I end up making almond butter. That looks good. I'm going to blend that and see if it looks like enough. Yeah, that should be a good amount, especially because they're toasted. They will have lots of flavor. Now for the dried cherries. I'm going to add a little bit of my flour mixture to the chopper, and that way the chopped cherries won't stick to the blade as badly. A heaping ½ cup of dried cherries, and that weighs 95 grams, and chop. The cherries did not chop very well, so I'm going to put them on a cutting board and try to chop them up a little bit better. This is how it looks with just the almonds. Now I'm going to add the flour and baking powder. Okay, so again, we don't want to overmix once the flour is in, but I will now scrape out this bowl and put the dough, the cookie dough, into the refrigerator for an hour. That dough is in the refrigerator, so now for the chocolate. And again, that's going to be chocolate orange coconut. So to the wet ingredients, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of orange emulsion. This is a little bit stronger and less medicine-y taste than orange extract. So 2 teaspoons of orange emulsion. I'll add the zest of, I actually have these beautiful little tangelos, so technically not oranges, but beautiful orange and lovely flavor. So I'm going to add the zest of 3 of these. So that's a lot of zest, but that's probably about 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more. For the dry ingredients, we want to substitute some of the flour for cocoa powder, and I want to sift the cocoa powder. So I'm going to use 290 grams of flour. May as well sift it all. 68 grams of cocoa powder. Basically just enough to bring me up to the 358 that I need for dry ingredients. And whisk. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And the toasted coconut. Just crunching that up a little bit. It's nice and dry. But I don't think I'm going to need all of that, so I need to blend this and see how much I need to put in. So remember, this was the second half of my wet ingredients, and I added the orange emulsion and orange zest. Just add a little bit more coconut flavor. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of solid coconut oil. I probably could have replaced all of the vegetable shortening with that, and it would have been delicious had I thought of that. Okay, I'm going to start with 1/2 cup of the toasted coconut and see how well that looks in there. 1/2 cup, which is 45 grams. That's a good amount. Save this for something else delicious. Okay, now I'll add the flour mixture, the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. Scrape down the sides. My favorite thing to do. Not. The chocolate batter is pretty thick, so I don't think it'll hurt if I put 1 more tablespoon of the coconut oil in. And I melted it this time. I want to make sure it gets throughout the mixture. Okay, so now this goes into the refrigerator for an hour. Okay, I have my cherry almond cookie dough and a very nice mat that has markings on it for inches and for centimeters. And I need a game board for my game that is 10.5 inches by 16.5 inches. So I will be able to make that on this board. To roll it out, I need to flour my area. And I don't want to do that too much because adding too much flour to the cookie dough will make it tough, and rolling it out too many times will make it tough. So I'm hoping to get this done in pretty much 1 shot. I should have more than enough. My dough feels a little bit wet and soft, which is a good thing because then if I get some extra flour in there, it won't be too bad. I have a rolling pin with spacers set to 1/4 inch. And when you're rolling, you basically start in the middle and push outward. Having the chunks in it does make it a little more challenging to roll it out smoothly, but that's okay because I'm going to put a layer of thin marzipan on it when I'm ready to make my game board. Marzipan is made with almonds and butter and sugar, so it should complement the flavors that I have in my cookie quite nicely. Okay, I'm going to use this big cake lifter to help me cut this to the right size. I might need to do a little bit of extra rolling, but we'll see. So I'm cutting it on the 2-inch mark, and then I should be able to cut it on the 12.5. Okay, now lengthwise I need 16.5. Already have a nice straight line. Probably can't see it, but I'll show you in a minute. Now the trick is going to be getting this off the board and onto a cookie sheet. And because I want to keep this all in one big piece, we'll see if it works, I'm going to flip this over onto the back of this cookie baking sheet. And I did already measure this, so I know it will fit perfectly on there. It's almost exactly the right size. And I'm going to try to flip that on there with the parchment paper on it. A little bit of oil so that it will stick. A little bit of work to get this unstuck, but hopefully not too bad. All right, so now the reason I put that on the back of the cookie sheet is because then from here, once it's done, I can just slide it directly onto my display board. So that will go into a 375-degree oven for about 12 minutes, and I want to see just a bit of golden brown on the edges. My oven, I have it set to 365, but internally it says 375. So that's the nice thing about having an internal thermometer. Okay, for the chocolate coconut orange cookies, I need to roll that dough out as well and cut that into 1-inch squares because that will be my playing pieces. So I'm just going to clean this off a little bit. This is actually a fondant rolling mat with all these nice dimensions on it, but it certainly works well for cookie dough. So I'm just going to use this bench scraper, and I'll have to remember to tell one person who likes to eat some of my baked goods has a tree nut allergy, and so even though the chocolate cookies don't have tree nuts, she won't be able to eat them because I'm using some of these utensils interchangeably. Sorry, Patricia. Okay, now I have my chocolate dough that I will roll out and cut into 1-inch squares. Okay, so sprinkling some flour. Now, how, you might ask, am I going to cut these into 1-inch squares? Well, I have this nifty expandable cutter that spaces the cutters in whatever size you put them. So I can set this to a 1-inch distance. So these are now spaced at 1 inch, or as close to 1 inch as I'm going to get. Then I just need to follow one of these lines with one of the cutters, and the others will cut at 1 inch. Or I could put this baking sheet down and keep my cutter up against that. Now for the next row, I keep the left edge into the last groove. And it's time to check that cookie. I turned the temperature down to 350 just because I want to make sure the middle is baked and the edges don't get too brown. This isn't quite as perfect as I thought it would be. Some are slightly wider than others, but I don't need to use them all. I need 64 of them because I'm going to have 8 different patterns, and I need 8 of each. So I easily have 64 at this point, so I can just pick out the ones that are most close in size to 1 inch by 1 inch. Looks pretty good. Nice and golden. I have that sitting on a rack to cool. Now I just have to take 64 of these or more in case something happens to some of them, and I'll bake those. Offset spatula. That's about 40, and I'll go ahead and bake those and prepare another pan about 40. Since these are such small squares, they probably won't take but 9 or 10 minutes to bake. Okay, there's the next set to be baked. My cherry almond game board fell over the side a bit, so I'm just going to cut those ends off and then slide this onto my display board so that it can finish cooling. I went ahead and took the chocolate 1-inch squares out of the oven at 8 minutes. I didn't want them to get too crunchy. The ends that I cut off of the cherry almond taste pretty good. It's a bit crunchy. It's probably fine. It's supposed to be a biscuit, right? This is going to be my display board. It is a solid, very heavy block of marble, and I got it so that I could make chocolate things by spreading out the chocolate and stamping them, or spreading out the chocolate on acetate and rolling it around. Haven't used it for that yet. Hopefully will someday. But for now, I need to slide my cookie board on here. That was easy enough, but how do I get the parchment paper out? I'm afraid I'm going to have to flip it. Okay, I'm just going to set this aside while I start making the royal icing. Actually, I forgot that I first need to make some little stand for the tiles to sit. So think about Scrabble. It's kind of similar to Scrabble. So I need to make some little stands. So I need to roll those out and make those and bake them. Okay, I'm going to have 4 of these. Well, now I know why the bakers never get finished with their projects, because this all takes a long time to do this specialized stuff. Okay, now to get that to stand up, I need some little back pieces. Okay, I'm going to put these in to bake while I get the last pieces cut. I'm going to roll it right on the baking sheet because I need some really narrow strips of chocolate. So what I need is 4 thin strips that are about 11 inches long. These are just extras to get rid of the dough. Okay, these are going in the oven. Okay, it's time to make the royal icing, and that's quite simple to make. It just takes 2 pounds of powdered sugar, 6 tablespoons of meringue powder. This is a dried egg white product, and that's what helps give the royal icing a hard surface that you can decorate on or write on or whatever. And then half a cup of water and whatever flavorings you want. So because these will go on the chocolate playing pieces, I will add some orange emulsion. I'm going to sift the powdered sugar and egg white meringue powder. I don't need to weigh it out because I need the whole bag. That's the powdered sugar. Now the 6 tablespoons of meringue powder. Now half a cup of warm water probably doesn't sound like enough for all that sugar, but you'd be amazed, it actually does come together. Okay, so it's already blended. So you're supposed to lift up a spoonful and let it drop, and the ribbons will disappear in about 8 seconds. That's a good consistency. To the royal icing mixture, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of orange emulsion. Okay, so you may be wondering how all of this is going to come together in the game. So frankly, I'm still trying to figure it out too. But I have lots of options. I'm just trying to figure out which ones are best. So I have my game board, and the idea is that I will cover this with marzipan. So marzipan is kind of like fondant, except it's a lot stickier and it has an almond flavor, so that should go with this cookie. And just make a flat surface on the top for my game board, and then draw a grid, a 1.5 inch square grid. And originally I had a very large one made that would be about double this size, but now it's just going to be half this size. And there will be a center square that's a color, and the rest of the squares will have either a number or no number. Okay, so if these are 1.5 inch grid, then I have my 1 inch playing pieces, and I'll have 8 different types of tiles. Each one will have a different flower or leaf on it. So the idea is to take the royal icing and put royal icing on all of these. It should be fairly simple, just white royal icing, and let them dry. And then put 8 different flowers on them. So how to do the flowers? My original idea was to use, see this little stamp? It's for stamping out shapes. I have some butterflies, I have leaves, I have flowers, and so I was just going to roll out some white fondant and stamp those out, and then color them so that I had 8 different ones and 8 copies of each one. So again, 64 tiles. And the way it'll be played is that someone can go first and put their tile in the center, and then the next person needs to try to match their flower to the one that was put in the middle. And if they can match and they put it on a number, on a square that has a number, that's going to be their score. So they'll keep up with their score, and they'll keep up with how many tiles they have. If they can't play, they can draw a tile, and the game will end when either no one can play, until no one can play, or till someone runs out of tiles. And so they will count their score at the end, and the person with the highest score wins. So again, the challenge is going to be rolling out the marzipan, placing it on here. I've never used marzipan before, so we'll see. It shouldn't be too bad. It's already pre-made. Then I need to put the numbers on the grid, and my original idea was to use a stencil. I didn't know that cookie stencils existed, but that's what this is. Unfortunately, the numbers are bigger than the squares I planned for, so that's out. I also have some food safe markers, so I might just write the numbers in. We'll see if I can do that neatly enough. If not, I could make some black royal icing and type numbers on. I might be able to do that better. I don't know. I'm going to try and see. And then work on these. So that's the plan. So I'm going to start with the marzipan. It is quite sticky, so I'm going to use the cornstarch. I have a piece of parchment paper here that I tape down, and I'm sure I'm going to need at least 2 of these. Before the age of fondant, this is what they would use to cover cakes. Nowadays, I think mostly people just make little animals and things out of them. But I think you can even put them in pastries. I'm pretty sure the British do that a lot. They like marzipan a lot. I like it. I think it tastes good. Some people don't like the taste of sort of almond extract kind of flavor. On this setting, I don't think I'm going to get enough because I need it to almost fill this. Let's try the old-fashioned. I do want it to be thin, so maybe that'll work just fine. I think that's pretty good. I'll go with it. Just going to trim the edges. Not bad. Okay, now I need to get the grid on. So, just a wet paper towel. How will this pen do? I think it'll work. Okay, so I'm going to mark off the grid and then draw it in. Oh, I have a little bit of extra cookie on this side. Okay, that's my center square. And my length is slightly shorter than I wanted, just 1/4 of an inch, but I wanted the center to be in the center. So now from here out, I can make them all 1.5 inches. Okay, well, it's done. With this colored marker, I'm going to mark the center square. I think I'm just going to draw right in the numbers. Practice. I have this nice stand to hold my phone. So hopefully I can get some above shots of me putting in the numbers. If you're wondering how I got this pattern and this set of numbers, I used a random number generator on the computer and then set it for each one of these. I had it pick numbers between 1 and 20, and every time it had a double-digit number, I made it a blank. Okay, now I'm going to roll out the fondant and make the little shapes that will go on the tiles. So I have pre-made fondant. One of these days I will make my own fondant, but not today. I'm pretty sure I won't need all of this, the whole thing, so I'm going to start with half of it. I do want these to be quite thin, so I put this on the 1/16. It'll be very thin. Okay, so I have 4 cutters, a butterfly, a leaf, and 2 different shaped flowers. So with these 4, I'll do 16 of each, and 8 of each will be colored one way and the other 8 will be colored another way. So that'll make 2 different tiles. Okay, so that's 18 leaves. Always do extra, remember? Butterflies. Of that flower. And 18 of that flower. Okay, I have all of my pieces or decorations for my tiles, and I'm just going to do a really simplistic color painting on them using some food coloring. And so for the leaves, I'm going to do half of them in a dark and light green and the other half in brown and orange. So summer and fall leaves. I have some cheap little paint brushes and tweezers to hold on to these as I paint them. That's the light green. I think I need to water it down a little bit. It's still pretty dark. Okay, here's the green ones. Moving on to one of the flowers. Okay, so I finished decorating all of my little fondant leaves and flowers. And the last things that I have to do are I have the chocolate tile pieces and I need to put royal icing on them. I have decorated cookies before with royal icing, but I'm certainly not an expert. Fortunately for these, all I have to do is put a white border on them and then fill them with white and then place one of these little fondant leaves or flowers or butterflies on each one of them. And I did want to mention that I made these little decorations out of fondant, and typically this kind of thing would probably be made out of gum paste because, unless I'm mistaken, in gum paste there is T-Lose powder which makes them harden more quickly. Fondant takes a while to harden. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, I was pretty tired after doing all of these that it's now the next day, and these were able to dry overnight, so they're nice and stiff, and they will work perfectly when I put them on the chocolate tile squares. The other thing I need to do is make my little stands that will hold the tiles. So think of it like you're playing Scrabble. And I made these like little shelves. So all I need to do is glue the bottom piece to the top piece. And I haven't made anything structurally like this before, but the shows that I've watched on TV where they are making these like gingerbread houses and things like that, the best glue to use for sticking these together is to use isomalt. I don't have any. Some people use royal icing, and that's what I have. So I'm going to use royal icing to put these together. And that'll be it. So the little stands, the tiles that are decorated. I'm going to take a bit of my royal icing that's all white, and I had put a bit of plastic over it so that it wouldn't get a skin on it, a hardened skin. So I'm going to take a bit of it and color it brown for my glue. This is chocolate brown, so that should be a good color. It looks like chocolate. I'm going to put it in a piping bag. Okay, let's see if this works. This one broke, but should be able to fix it with some royal icing. It's a bit of a gap. Just have to let it sit. Okay, we'll see. Hopefully they'll harden. Okay, time for the white royal icing. I have my piping bag. I might need to add more as I go along, so I'm just going to use this clip rather than the tying a knot. Okay, here goes. Ooh, way too small. Well, it's certainly giving me an opportunity to practice piping, since these don't really have to be perfect, because they're going to have one of these on it. But it's good practice for squeezing and releasing the bag at the right times. I think the real trick is that you want the outline to be all the way to the edge, but if you put it too far, it can start to slide down. So I sort of err on the side of bringing it in, and that means you can see cookie edge around it. Not great, but for this, it's fine. Also, typically when you do an outline in a middle, the outline texture of the royal icing is much thicker, and in the middle can be thinner, so you can get a nice flood. I haven't bothered to make two different kinds, but again, for this, I think it's fine. Now for the fun part of adding the little shapes. I think it looks pretty cool. Now I just have 60 more to do. Okay, so I finished all of the pieces, and they're out of the frame of the camera, but they're all upside down. So finished all the pieces. They look like that. They're stirred up. We're going to play the game. This is my husband, Chauncey.
Hello.
And yeah, so these actually work. These are little stands to hold the pieces. So here we go. We start by selecting 8 tiles.
One's that. And I got 3 of the same here. So here we need to shuffle them up a little bit better.
I do too. I have 3 of 2 different ones. All right.
Okay.
Let's go. All right. Let's say if you don't get one after first, you draw one, then you can go with something else.
You draw one. Is that the same? Or?
No. Okay. Does it look the same?
It does look the same.
No, it doesn't.
In design.
Okay. Well,
not color.
I actually do have one. All right. So. Okay, your turn.
Oh, relief.
All right, so you didn't get one, but you can just play anything.
All right, so we'll just introduce another.
Yeah.
I'm going for the 8 points this time. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as long as you play it next to something. All right. Oh, okay. Good call. Your turn. Oh, that was smart. You had more than one of that one, and I don't. So. All right. So I don't. So I can introduce a new one, right?
Can they be placed diagonally?
No.
No. All right. Well, I guess I won't get any points for that then.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna play something new.
We down for 9 and I'm out.
Oh. Okay, now you're out, and we have to add up the score though. 61. You have 3 9s. 57. I won. Woohoo!
So let's eat it.
Okay, well, that is this episode. I made a game out of cookies, and it was playable, and it was kind of delicious. These are the chocolate orange coconut, and we don't really taste the coconut, so I think I needed to either have fresh coconut or have some coconut extract or something in it to give it more coconut flavor. But they're still delicious. You can definitely taste the chocolate and the orange that's in the royal icing. Then these, we had some extra pieces, and I gave one to Chauncey yesterday, and he loved it. He said it was great. So it'll be interesting to see how it tastes with the marzipan, or if people eat the marzipan. Not sure. I'm really excited that these little stands worked. I mean, they didn't perfectly hold the tiles, but this is holding the tile. So, but they worked. And yeah, so I'll be taking this to work tomorrow and let people eat it. And definitely would not have been able to complete all of this in the time allotted. I think the Great British Baking Show gave them 3.5 hours, so I definitely would not have finished this. Maybe if I changed the different things on the tiles, I mean, I can make it really simplistic, but I'm a botanist, so I wanted to try and do butterflies and leaves and flowers. But the game, the grid worked, the size of the cookies worked. Anyway, so that's it for this one. Next episode will be for starting bread week. And I think the first challenge, the signature challenge, is to make tea cakes, which is a very British thing. But I will be making some tea cakes. And before I sign off, my friend Cynthia said I have to remind you to please like, and if you enjoyed my videos, please share them on your social media so I can find more people who are interested in watching, and please subscribe. Thank you.